what is your recommended speaker setup to start with, or what's the best standard speaker setup? Do I need to place the speakers according to one Dolby Atmos or DTS or RO system? And well, this does not really depend on the MP40 or MP60 or on Lyngdorf or on us, but really on your home cinema room layout and your loudspeakers and how many channels you can afford. So these questions are a little bit difficult to answer because that's very individual and very different from system to system, and it's not really on us to give you the best advice on your specific home cinema and setup. Luckily, Dolby makes a very good guideline where everything is described from 5.1 to, well, actually from 2.1 to 5.1 to 7.1.2 to 7 point or 9.1.4 and 11 point something. So everything is in there, and luckily every DTS setup aligns or matches to these Dolby setups. So your MP40 or MP60 does not really determine how to set up the speakers in the best way. That is something. It really depends on your speakers and your subwoofer. Does that mean you can combine any speaker combination you like? No, and therefore I have a matching next question, which came from Henrik. Why can't I save my chosen speaker setup? I cannot save. I cannot click the save button. And this will happen if it does not meet the configurations or it's not certified by Dolby or DTS. And then you cannot save it. It's a so-called invalid setup. So let's look into the menu here. We go into setup. We go into speakers in room and speaker setup. Here we have set up a fairly normal 5.1 setup. And to give you one example, what is not allowed, what doesn't comply with the Dolby or DTS settings is we go to edit. I will just, to give an example, remove the surround speakers, set that to none. And now, for example, you could not just add back speakers or rear speakers. You can do that here. Just let's put on 2 large ones. But you can see invalid setup, and the save button is not activated. You cannot save the setup because this is not a Dolby surround system, a proper Dolby surround speaker setup to have front speaker, center speaker, LFE, and only back speakers. You can simply not save it, and that has nothing to do with the MP40 or that we don't like it. It's really not according to any Dolby system. Once you add the surround speakers in this case, then you can save it again. Another example. In this case here, I put on 2 back speakers or rear speakers. I can also remove these here to none again. For example, if I say I have a center speaker here, a back center. So far so good, but to give you another example, what is not possible, if I then think I want a center rear and also a pair of rear speakers next to it, this is again an invalid setup. It's not possible because it's not according to, well, this Dolby rulebook. Let's remove that one here. Set it to none. Another example is if I would remove the subwoofer. Let's say you want to start with a 5 or 7 channel system and you have large front speakers and you don't have a subwoofer yet. Again, this is an invalid setup because the LFE signal has to be played by some kind of loudspeaker. So in this case, this is not, you cannot save this. So in this case, you either have to add a subwoofer or change the speakers to XXL, because then the LFE channel or signal will be redirected to the front speakers, and you can see in the menu here you can save it. Let's add one LFE again for later. So of course you can do a lot of different speaker setups here, but some setups are not allowed and you cannot save it. What also is not covered here in the speaker setup menu is the actual upmixing to the channels. That is also defined in the processor, which is defined by Dolby, DTS and Auro. So whatever kind of speaker setup you save here, the actual signal that you hear from the speakers is not set here because that is predefined by the processor or algorithms from them. A related question from Daddy is, would you suggest a center channel at top of the screen? Would there be a lip sync issue and how can this be overcome? This is something, it's a good question at this point, simply because the distance and the exact placement in your room, so the measured distance to the speaker, is not done here in this menu, but comes later when we talk about Room Perfect in the sequence in the menu. So that anything like distance and so is not set here. Let's move to a different question, another question. Also related to this one is, which is the ideal speaker size? We kind of covered this in the last Ask Lyngdorf session, which you can find on YouTube. How the speaker size also is related to the subwoofer size and the subwoofer performance. So again, it's not really on us, on Lyngdorf or and the MP40, MP60, what is the best speaker size for your speaker, because Room Perfect will kind of make the best out of a given setup here, but it's not really on us to define or to specify or to give advice what your speakers, how your speakers perform the best. Most loudspeakers benefit from setting them to large, just to relieve them from the lowest bass, say from 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hertz, and let them play fully in their comfort zone, which we covered in that first session. And all remaining bass then will be redirected to the subwoofer or subwoofers with a crossover slope of 24 dB. But as I said in that first session, make sure that your subwoofer is ready for it, is capable of taking up all the bass. Because if you set every speaker to large or medium, then it can be 5 or 7 or even 9 or more speakers redirecting bass to your subwoofer. So you better make sure that your subwoofer is able to do that. So if we go into the menu again, we can set up the speakers, for example, to large, and then you see the roll-off here, and that is redirected to the subwoofer.